I'm not gonna lie guys, controversial theories kinda fuel me. I just don't think that it is very interesting if we always agree at all times. Now don't get me wrong, agreement feels good, it is important to have agreement, but you need that pinch, you just need that little bit of disagreement to add a little bit of spice, add a little bit of salt. This is your real life shonen story playing out in real time. An online keyboard warrior battle of intellectual supremacy. Nerds from across the world gather, they flock for this gigantic theory tournament in which by the end you either feel like you have 10,000 IQ or you gotta eat that crow. So as should be expected, JB is here today to do what JB does best, facilitate the controversy. Pick your sides now if you want to play, because it is time for Wano Kuni's most controversial theory to start bearing some fruit or not. Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, what the hell is the theory? Which side should I choose? Spit it out, JB. Let's talk about Zoro leaving the crew, during or shortly after Wano.
But JB, that isn't the most controversial Wano theory.
Shush now. We're talking about the most controversial theory, you're distracting me. Never forget, I make the rules here. So if you are not familiar with this theory, I'll go ahead and link it in the description. The last one that I made, I feel like is of a higher quality than my original one, but it's a theory that I've been talking about for a while, and even before me, a lot of other people were as well. But that doesn't stop it being a highly disagreeable idea. But where I stand is that I am highly persuaded by the idea. I personally believe that it will occur, and so that is why I keep bringing it up. So here's the situation, guys. In the very last chapter of One Piece, we can see Zoro heading towards the Flower Capital, where we know that Sanji and Frankie are preparing to fight X-Drake, Hawkins, and the other member of the Flying Six. And so as for what happens between Sanji and Frankie and maybe Zoro, and the Supernova and other characters, I'm not entirely sure. I think it's gonna be very interesting. I hope to see a fight. But as far as what this video is about, what is more important is Zoro meeting up with Sanji again, and what Sanji and Zoro will do, or say. So to sort of remind you of the various things that we know that are curiosities at the very least, Zoro did not want Luffy to go to Whole Cake Island in order to rescue or retrieve Sanji. He said specifically, leave that idiot alone. And when Luffy told him that he was going to go after Sanji anyway, Zoro said, and I quote, "Don't make me kick your ass." And so the question that we should definitely be asking is, why is this in the story? What purpose does it serve? What are Zoro's thoughts here? And so I would say the first perspective is that Zoro doesn't have anything against Sanji necessarily, but because of what Sanji chose to do, going to Big Mom's territory, potentially inspiring her wrath, Zoro decided that it was not worth the risk. They could not deal with Kaido and Big Mom at the same time. So it wasn't really because of Sanji, but rather Big Mom, that Luffy should not go after and retrieve Sanji. This is probably what the story is implying the strongest, or at least outright saying. But the other perspective, and one that I am personally persuaded by, is the idea that Zoro might believe that Sanji has, whether intentionally or not, left the Straw Hat crew. I think that the context surrounding all of these events is incredibly interesting. And when you put it all together, it makes a very strong argument that as far as Zoro is concerned, the moment that Sanji left, he left the crew. Sanji did not tell them anything, right? He just left them a note saying, I gotta go see a girl real quick. That was it. Now granted, while Luffy was talking to Peckham, Zoro was listening outside, and it was heavily suggested, and they'd already sort of deduced this beforehand, that Sanji was sort of forced to go. You can't decline an invitation to Big Mom's tea parties. But at the same time, Oda implied and Oda speculated through the various characters in the story, from Chopper to Brook to Nami, that essentially once Sanji had left to go marry Big Mom's daughter, that essentially made him a Big Mom pirate. Peckham even straight up says this: the moment the wedding is made official, Blackleg Sanji will cease to be a member of your crew. Luffy then says, well, Sanji's obviously going to refuse that wedding, but we know from the events in Whole Cake Island that he did not. And if you want to wear your tinfoil hat just a little bit tighter, remember back to Whole Cake Island? Usually when it goes to wedding ceremonies, a man and a woman are married, and then the priest says, "You may now kiss the bride." And we got to that moment in the wedding. So Sanji may technically be married to Pudding. But I don't really want to get into technicalities, and I don't really think that this matters all that much anyway as far as Zoro is concerned. The point is, the characters, the Straw Hats specifically stated that Sanji had a choice to go to Whole Cake Island or not, and he chose to go by himself. That was his call. He didn't ask for permission despite being a Straw, despite having a captain. He didn't ask his captain if that was all right. If his plan really was to refuse the wedding, he didn't consider the dangers that put the Straw Hat crew in, potentially facing 2 Yonko at the same time, and if he didn't plan on refusing it, then that would make him a Big Mom pirate. Zoro could even be thinking to himself, if that man plans on fighting the Big Mom pirates by himself without any of these Straw Hats to assist him, then we might as well leave him for dead. He's an idiot. But yeah, guys, why is all of this significant? Why did Oda take so much time to speculate the status of Sanji being a part of the Straw Hats or not? And why did Oda repeatedly show Zoro almost ominously listening to these conversations and being the one person to say, no, we must leave Sanji behind? And I think that a lot of people out there won't really have an answer for this. Oh, this is just, it doesn't mean anything. But for those that believe that this is really important to Zoro and that Zoro may leave the crew because of it, the answer is very straightforward. Zoro has very strong opinions about a crew and dealing with members who leave it. He doesn't take the act lightly. So here, guys, is what you need to know. And the comparison that we have is when Usopp left the crew in Water 7. This is where the majority of this speculation derives from. And so if somebody were to leave the crew, Zoro isn't necessarily completely against them coming back, but they absolutely must apologize and not pretend like nothing happened. So relating to Zoro potentially meeting up with Sanji again here in the upcoming chapters, that better be the first thing out of Sanji's mouth. I'm sorry. Please take me back. I don't know if you guys noticed this or not, but Sanji did not do that. He met up with the rest of the Strats that were not present in Whole Cake Island, and whatever happened beforehand with him and Big Mom and Whole Cake Island, not brought up. Completely swept under the rug. Guys, I guarantee you that Zoro will not be as forgiving. If Sanji meets up with Zoro and does not bring it up, does not apologize, does not say anything, Zoro may not do anything initially, but he will take note of it. Another very important thing to Zoro is that if somebody were to leave the crew can't go searching for them, can't go bring them back. They have to decide to do that on their own, and then ask for forgiveness. After Enies lobby, when everyone returned back to Water 7, Luffy and Chopper and everybody wanted to go find Usopp and tell him, it's okay, you can come back. But Zoro absolutely told them no. I think that Luffy has essentially already failed this parameter as far as Zoro is concerned, the moment Luffy decided to chase after Sanji. The final thing that may be important to Zoro is Luffy's take on everything and how it is that he responds or reacts to it. In order for Luffy to be Zoro's captain, he has to maintain his own dignity and self-respect. Which essentially means that Luffy probably has to follow the 2 things that we have mentioned previously, and it's also likely that Luffy has already failed this based on what we know happened Zoro does not know when Sanji fought Luffy and kicked him and hurt him. Again, here's Zoro's words and not mine. Listen, guys, even though he's a big idiot, Luffy is our captain. It doesn't matter whatever the thoughts were and whatever argument and who was correct, who decided to leave, when it ended up happening. The fight was made and the outcome decided. It is better not to have someone who cannot pay due respect to him as part of the crew. A crew whose captain has lost his dignity will surely collapse. It is none of my business that you usually joke around, but if you humiliate yourself yet still want to claim any pretense of being my leader, then I will be the one to leave the crew. In the future, there is no way we can trust a guy who leaves the crew on a whim. We aren't playing pirates like kids here. So hopefully now you guys understand that as it pertains to the theory that Zoro will leave the crew, Zoro's interactions with Sanji are of particular interest in really validating some of the ideas. So now, guys, let me talk about the specific things that I am looking for in the upcoming chapters. I want you guys to know that I do not think that this theory will be proven right or wrong in the next couple chapters. It's something that I really see as being later on in the game of Whole Cake Island. However, these upcoming chapters will be very, very important in allowing me to continue to argue for some of these ideas. So first things first, guys, it was very interesting that at the beginning of Whole Cake Island, Zoro meets up with Luffy, but Sanji is not there. And when Sanji and the rest of the crew that traveled to Whole Cake Island ends up reconvening with Luffy, and then meet all of the other Straw Hats, Zoro, conveniently or not, found a way to disappear. He was the only Straw Hat that wasn't there. So if Oda allows Zoro to do essentially the same thing in the upcoming chapters, we're not sure if it's going to be the next chapter, the chapter after that, we might sort of switch perspectives. We might not get back to what's going on with Sanji, Frankie, and Zoro for a couple chapters, so just in the next couple chapters. But if Zoro finds a way to not meet up with Sanji at all, I consider that to be huge evidence and support for the idea that Zoro meeting up with Sanji is very, very important. Oda intends for it to be important. I cannot think of any other reason why Oda may do this, especially when it seems both inevitable and convenient for them to meet up right now. But along this same train of thought, but slightly different, it's also possible that Zoro actually does meet up with Sanji and Frankie again and helps them fight against Hawkins and Drake and everybody else. But they need a cool down moment in order to casually talk to each other. If by the end of this battle, Zoro and Sanji are separated again, I also consider that to be evidence that a confrontation between the two needs to occur, because Oda will have conspicuously delayed it once more. But let's assume that these first two thoughts are wrong, and Zoro ends up meeting with Sanji again. They actually have a moment to talk to each other. I am looking for Sanji to immediately apologize for what he has done and not try to sweep it under the rug. If Sanji ignores it, this will be huge evidence, because Oda has already sort of built up this plotline, in my opinion, to such a point that he cannot ignore it. If Zoro has any moment in which he's quietly thinking to himself, that ... moment, you guys know I will point it out. But here's the worst case scenario, and something that I really do believe is possible. Oda is very, very clever, and sometimes he tries to deflect us from what it is that we should be thinking, or what ultimately ends up occurring. So maybe they meet up and Sanji does actually apologize. Does that mean that I will give up on the idea? Maybe not. But I do expect most people to jump from the ship if it does. It really depends on how much you believe. And so what I'm talking about here is that there are several critical things that Zoro does not know yet, and I do not expect to be brought up immediately. If you guys recall, Wano is cut off from the rest of the world. They do not receive the world news, so Zoro does not know that Big Mom is on her way. The exact situation that Zoro predicted is coming to fruition, because Sanji ended up leaving and going to Whole Cake Island, messing with the Yonko Big Mom. He has inspired her wrath because Luffy had to chase after him, and now the Straw Hats are going to have to deal with two Yonko at the very same time. The lives of the Straw Hats have never been in more danger, and Luffy is responsible for that. Whether or not that was his intention, he decided to retrieve Sanji. That is on Luffy. The captain endangered his entire crew. Additionally, Zoro does not know that Sanji actually officially left the crew, or at least he tried to give that impression when he ended up fighting Luffy, so I'm looking for that moment in which this information is revealed to him, which may drastically change his perspective on Sanji's return, especially if he doesn't bring it up and apologize immediately. And third, guys, and this is really low-key, but I think that it matters, what is up with Jinbei? Has Jinbei actually died? Now, I don't really want to discuss this here. No, I don't think that Jinbei has died, but there's a lot of theories on the topic. But regardless, the status of his life is in question. What is up with him is in question. And his death is, in large part, Sanji and Luffy's failure. The same applies to Pedro. They left Zoe with Pedro, and then they left Whole Cake Island without him. Zoro does not know that. But I guess the point of this video, above all else, is that this idea is something that I am personally persuaded by, and many others, but it is incredibly controversial. Anytime that I talk about it, man, unsubs, dislike, hate comments, what an idiot. This guy just speculates to speculate, and so on and so forth. But we are now finally reaching a time where this speculation isn't just something to talk about in the distant future. It is, things are about to happen, or could happen, very soon. So get your popcorn and pick your side. Somebody is going to eat some crow. And you better know that I'm looking forward to finding out who. But yeah, guys, that is all I had to say today. As always, I am curious as to what you guys think. Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.